Alright everyone, good morning, welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to be working on another Western style holster. This is a pattern I came up with a few years ago for a friend for a Ruger, and I used it so many times I transferred it to a piece of plastic from Weaver. It's actually been pretty good. Don't make a lot of money, but most of what I've made has come from this boy. So, let's go ahead and get started. This set up here. Some weights on it. It's good to have lots of weights. Give it a quick trace out. Using the scratch awl. I like the plastic because I can kind of just run the scratch awl right up on it with pretty good pressure. I don't have to worry about it crinkling or bending or warping. Went ahead and added some paper to the tabletop here because I get a lot of glare because my tabletop is epoxied. So it reflects a lot of light. Figured I would try out some paper and see how that works. Get our main loop going on here. Okay. We'll go ahead and get ready to cut those out. I just like to give my knives a couple of strops. Keep them sharp before I cut. Start with some green jeweler's polish, and then we'll do some rouge here. Make a nice mirror finish on the blade. Cuts nice and smooth. Alright, for ease, we'll just go ahead and cut out our strap roughly, so we're not fighting a piece of leather that's big. Go ahead and slowly cut this out. right on the line. Okay. Take it a section at a time. This knife is fairly sharp, but the leather can be kind of thick for this. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple passes as necessary. And how's everyone's Sunday morning going? Having a good weekend, I hope. Leave that tight little corner there, and I'll come back for it in a second with a knife that works a little bit better for tight cuts. Okay. Don't want to put too much pressure on the pull, because then that's when you slip and you mess things up. Let's get out my clicker knife. Got a nice little curved trim blade going on here. Let's just get that cut a little easier. Go. Neaten that up just a little bit. You can also use a hole punch to make a better inner corner there. But I am currently missing the right sized hole punch for that. So we'll just cut it up by hand. this out with the good knife. One day I'll get another knife from Terry, but he's in such high demand at the moment that it's nearly impossible to get one of these knives. The steel is super good, and they're just very, very pretty nip shield knives. Love them. Well worth the money. And he actually sells them at a fairly decent price too. I think this knife here is $100. Other people selling knives, they're not nearly this kind of quality for a good bit more. Trim that corner up just a little bit. There we go. There's our main shell. And that's being made out of 9-ounce Hermann oak. Grab a straight edge here. Just a little help. Okay, and almost done with this one. What do we think of the new camera angle? Is this top-down angle working for everybody? Do I need to be in the picture more? Don't really need to put those on there yet, as we're still going to stamp this leather. That's our center circle for our cutout. Alright, let's do a little cleanup here. Now, Customer has also asked that we add an additional belt loop for a regular pants 1.5 inch belt. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a belt loop in here after the fold, right about here. This is going to allow us to put a regular belt strap through here for pants, so it can be carried fairly snugly, as well as allowing for a drop holster or a standard over the belt carry for a cartridge belt. So let's get cleaned up here, and I'll grab a different piece of leather for that belt strap. Okay. This one might be wide enough. So normal belt is 1.5 inches, and you got to give it some room for the strap to stretch around the belt. So I usually like to go at least 1.25 inches between stitch marks. But probably 2 inches is a little safer, especially since he said he's going to have a thicker belt for carry. So I'm looking at 2 inches between stitch lines. This is almost 3 inches wide, so I think we might need to find a slightly wider strap of leather. I might have to cut a piece off of my hide. So, I'm going to go ahead and we'll grab my strap cutter here. I think we're going to set it all the way out to 4 inches, just to make sure I got enough to work with. Get that cut. Ooh. 1 second. Don't need a very big piece. Actually kind of hard to get this big old piece of leather onto this table. I usually have to make all my cuts on the floor. Which can be somewhat of a pain itself. I'll roll this back up. Alright, stow that away. Now, let's take a look here at the appropriate spot, because our fold line is here. So we're going to kind of come down into this section. Our width is 5.5 inches. Okay. ahead and square this end back up. Kind of hard to cut straight when you're holding such a big piece of leather. Okay, got a nice square edge. A little wider than 4 inches. I think yep. I didn't tighten that down enough, so my strap cutter slipped a little at the end. That's alright, we're not going to go that far. So I think, let's do a little bit of figure in here. 2 inches for the belt. I want at least a 1/4 inch off of the stitch line. But I think I want to put a double stitch in here. So we're going to do 3 inches. That way I can do 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. That sound about right? Yep, I think I like that. Yep, I like that a lot. So we're going to go 3 inches. So I should have cut this down to 3 inches rather than 4. But I'd rather have just a little bit more. Give that a good tighten. Come on. My blade's getting dull. There we go. Okay. That looks good. Now, this is 5.5 inches wide. So, I'm going to call this 4 inches wide for our strap. Go ahead and give that a cut. And check square all around. That looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Alright. Now, I kind of want to make this have a bit of a curve. So let's do belt marks, or stitch marks, I should say. That's our outer stitch. Nice. Here's our inner stitch. slightly curved inner allow for that to flex a little bit. So let's give that a cut out. Like so. This will let the belt wrap just a little better. While giving us a nice solid base for the stitching. There we go. Welcome everyone. Okay, so this piece will get sewn into here like so, and then our belt strap, oops, our pants belt, regular old pants belt, will get in here like so. So this will come down and will allow this to curve a little bit more around the waist with this cutout than if this had gone all the way square, because then it would be curving like this rather than like this. Just a little bit more play. So we've got that piece made. We've got that piece ready. And we've got this piece ready. That's all the pieces we need, the major pieces we need for this holster. Time for another tidy up before my bench gets completely overwhelmed. Okay, then we will move on to the next portion, which is going to be preparing for stamping. So I think what we'll do is we'll give this another, since I haven't made one of these, but I might want to in the future. It's a little much. Go ahead and plan this out. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So for a serpentine border, I do 15 millimeters. Right now we're at 14, so I want to go up to 29. Right on the, there we go. So that, put that right there. Yeah, that looks good. Like so. Okay. Go back down to our 14 millimeter distance, like so. Make a mark. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. Let's go ahead. I'm going to save this for future use, because I think I might reuse this pattern. So now that I've got this made, go ahead and just stick it on here, like so. Give that a bit of a trace. Okay, go ahead and make our notes there. So our first is 4 millimeter stitch, and then a 10 millimeter stitch, and then a 14 millimeter, and a 29 millimeter. There we go. Now we've got all those notes written down so that I can turn that into a nice plastic pattern for future use. That way I don't have to redo the math every time. Alright, so that's all marked and ready for stamping. Now, the reason I do that is because notice here I've got 4 millimeter stitch, 8 millimeter for the outside of the border, and 23 millimeter for the inside of the border. So having that written down, I know that I can get my wing dividers here, and my ruler with the millimeter markings. I like this one because it actually has little notches for each, so I can actually stick the tips into those notches and get a perfect measurement, 8 millimeters. And 8 millimeters applies to both this piece here, so we'll give that a go. And then we'll give this a trace all the way around the edges. This will be the outside of our serpentine border. There we And that is the outside of the serpentine border. Now for the next one, which is 23 millimeters for the inside edge. So go ahead and stick that there and that there. Make sure we get right in there without being springy so that it doesn't change on me. There we go. Put that down. Then we're going to go ahead and trace this around nice and slowly around the curves. Come on now. These corners can be a little bit of a pain. This is just a rough guide mark. It won't be permanent until I get the swivel knife out and cut these into place. Spin the leather. Okay, and there are our marks for our serpentine border. Everything in the middle will end up being basket weave stamped. Just see if I can't even that out just a scope. There we go. So, first things first, go ahead and let down my leather. What we need to do is get this out of it and go to the stone. And get everything nice and evenly wet. Just a little too impatient to properly case the leather. And it's so dry here that even when it's properly cased, I have like a 10-minute window before it just dries right out on me anyways. So, put a nice little bit of moisture in here without soaking it. Let it sit for a second. And then just keep adding a little bit at a time as I go to keep it in the right area without being too mushy, without being too hard. That's it. Grab the old strop. And give the swivel knife a few licks. polished, along with everything else. It's probably not good for it, but I'm just using the edge of the rubber here as my height guide, so I just kind of gently rub it along that to keep the same angle while I'm stropping. Okay. Now, go ahead and just cut in our border with the swivel knife. Slow and steady. Try to lift it up as little as possible so you don't get a bunch of stop and start marks. If you do it right, you won't see them, but you can get some crossover where your marks kind of make a little bit of an X and you can see it. So go ahead and cut in our border. Nice and gentle. Don't need to hurry. There we go. There's our outer border. Now let's go ahead and cut our inner. I'm actually glad I bought these extra little LED lights for doing this. I was having a hard time seeing what I was doing with the little pinpoint lights that I was using. They were too bright in one small area, so they would flood the camera, so I had to point them up. Got an angled ceiling right over my head, so I'd point them right there and let the light reflect down, and it didn't wash the camera out, but I couldn't see much either. When I'm not streaming or recording, I actually have a big LED 4-foot lamp right here that lights the whole area up very nicely. You need to have the appropriate amount of light when you're doing this. And I think that I've finally got a decent amount of light to both record and work, which is making me very happy right now. Having no trouble seeing my line and following it, which is not something I could say for how I was doing it before. Okay, there is our inner border. Now, start in the with some guidelines. So when I basket weave, I like to throw in some guidelines. And about there's a good angle. So take that, and then I will line the other side of the ruler up, and then just go across lightly from the back side here. And again, that should just help me maintain a relatively straight line as I'm doing this. It's a little harder to make sure you're straight when you start working around obstacles. And since I'm going to put my maker's mark right there, not complete that, so that I can take and grab my stamp here. And I'm going to go ahead and I like to put it right about there, kind of roughly centered. Go ahead and make sure we got a good impression. We do. Very nice. So you can go ahead and see there that that's stamped pretty nicely. The leather isn't too wet, didn't mush out on me, took a good stamp. But it's starting to dry out just a little bit. We got some time, probably another few minutes before I need to add more. So we're going to go ahead and grab up our basket weave stamp and get to work. Starting the basket weave can be probably the most annoying part of it. So let's use this line right here. Line the side of the basket weave up, right in the middle of the line. Give that a good thwack. I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to go on the other side of the line, line it up right on the line, line the heel of the stamp up into the other stamp, then give that a whack. Then we're going to flip it again. We're going to keep flipping until we get our first 2 rows basically all the way across. Give that there. That way we can establish the pattern and the line. So we've got this on our guide mark, like so. Just keep flipping, line it up on the mark, like so. We're going to basically follow this whole section right here until we've got it walked all the way to the edge. And once we've got that, then we can start building off of those layers without being crooked from the get-go. Like so. This is why this part is the most time consuming. You just rotate, stamp, rotate, line it up, like so. Welcome everyone. Yes, I need to rotate again. So we're going to put the edge of the stamp right on the line. Put that heel right next to the center portion. There's a little slot there where it goes. And we're going to go ahead and do that one final time over here. And then we can actually just kind of set our tool in here. We're going to angle it in. Just give it a bit of an angle. Line it up where it belongs. And then lift. So we're just towing it in without going over the line. And then we're going to go back to this side and finish our line off. Okay, on the line, put the heel in place, flip it on the line, heel in place, flip it, okay. Like so. Okay, and I think we can get one more in here. Yep. And then finish it off with a partial, where it's just towed in. You might have to not only tilt it this way, but a little this way as well to kind of get it in there at the right angle. And now that we've got that in there, now we can start building off of this. So you're going to want to line it up directly over the line marks there. And there's some notches on the side that you can see to line up the pattern in the middle. You're going to want to line those patterns up. Oops. Kind of muffed that one. Alright. Line them like so. And then you can just start walking along. Now that you got your pattern started, just walk it along. Do one row at a time. Okay. Now that we're here, we got to start beyond where we've already stuck our line. So I'll go down one and just kind of make a very soft little indent with the other toe. And now I've got a mark here that I can take and use to line up. And now I've got it perfectly in line with the rest of them. So this one's going to be a toe in. So give that a little tap. Don't have to go perfectly to the edge because I'm going to put a small little border stamp around here to kind of both add a little bit of character, hide some of the empty spaces where the end of the basket weave stops, and possibly hide any little flaws that may have worked their way in. Now we're just going to go back the other direction. time. Just take it nice and steady. Line things up the same way every time. And you're going to end up with some nice straight basket weaving without too much of a problem. Go ahead and mark that one so I've got the right spot. Since we're extending beyond our previous pattern location. There, give that just a little bit of a tap. Now we can go up to the next row. And keep going. Next to sewing this together, this is probably the longest bit of work required. It's not difficult work, it just takes a long time because you're doing, what, a quarter of a square inch at a time? And we'll mark our next spot, jump up to the next row, like so. Then we'll go and do a bit of a toe in to fill in that gap. Just a tiny little tap, it doesn't need to be much. We don't want to go outside the border line. We just want to give the impression that there's a continuation there. And we're just going to keep walking this back and forth. Like so. Okay, now we're going to turn this just a little bit here so I can kind of make a toe in over here. Just a little one. There we go. Fills that out kind of nice. Then I gotta line this up like I normally would, toe it out, and give it a tap. There we go. That one's not quite going to be a whole stamp, so we'll just back it off a little bit and toe it in. And then continue on with regular stamp. Like so. Okay. We're approaching the point where I'm going to want to add just a little bit of moisture to the leather, but not yet. Okay, I'm just going to fill that out. Toe that one in, and then we'll come down here. This one gets just the barest little tap to fill that out. Now, you can see that our guideline is right here, perfectly parallel with the edge of our stamping. That means we're on the right track, and then I'm not going cattywampus. It's just where it needs to be. So we're going to continue on, like so. Okay, do another little, line it up like we were going to do a full hit, and then just toe it in, a little tap. Okay, line it up like normal, angle it out, just tappy tap, tap tap tappy, tap tap taparoo. Okay. Okay, gotta be careful there. It wants to go over the line. Line that up like normal, angle it out. There we go. Okay, and there's not even really, because the angle is so sharp right here, there's not really much of a need to fill that area in. It's so small that it'll get filled in with the little stamp that we're going to use to finish that out. Okay, and that one's almost going off the edge, so we got to be careful as we get into those corners, smaller and smaller areas. We're doing less stamps per row. That means we are also getting closer to being able to not line these up nearly as well. go. A little bit of a toenail in. Okay. And our last guideline on this area is looking pretty nice and parallel. So we're still doing a good job keeping things straight. Okay. Go ahead and make a guide mark. Lay that out flat and then angle. Alright. That should be that whole portion basket stamped. Now we're going to move on to this side. I'm going to give my hand a break. Holding that tiny little tool tends to cause some cramping. So we're going to wet this down. Nice even, so it all looks about the same. Same color going on. Just a nice wetting of the top layer. Okay, give that a second to sit. Stretch out my hand a little bit while that's drying just a skosh. Coffee's getting cold. Welcome, welcome. Get back to the basket stamping. So far we're doing a good job keeping these nice and straight and in line. So we're going to go ahead and start over here. Make a little bit of a impression. See how we're looking. Need to toenail that one just a little bit because it's right up on the edge. And we're going to get back to business as usual. Working our way across. Here shortly we're going to run into the curve, which is going to split our line, and we're going to have to work around it. But that's alright. Basically make two separate lines that'll carry on independent of each other. But if we're keeping things lined up as we should, then they should be pretty well in line. Just go ahead and take this, set it in there, kind of make a little mark. Toenail that in. Okay. Occasionally you're going to get one that's a little bit SOAD, huh? Holland. 1331. Have to guess as to who that is. System of a Down. So, obviously, going to be 414. Cav. That's toughy. Especially since I don't recognize that name. I would almost guess it's Sergeant Kelly. So who do we got here, Holland? You Sergeant Kelly in disguise. I don't think you'd be Abe. Could be Dollar, I guess. Gonna leave me hanging, huh? Alright. That's alright. I'll just keep working. So we're going to work our way up into this little corner here, and then we'll go down this side once we've got it taken care of. Let's see here. I don't remember if we used SOAD as our call sign. System operations at Diamondback. Gullible. Sergeant Weast. Anyways. I don't think we used that once we got back to the CP after we were attached to 5th Special Forces. So I think that's gotta be someone involved in the first 6 months of that fun little trip. So I'm going to guess it's not Bull. Because I don't think we used that. Maybe we did. honestly, my memory is complete shit. So. There we go. Fill that out. There we go. We got that section filled out nice. So we'll work into the long flap section. That's good. There we go. Okay. Slowly work our way through here. This one actually is where things slow down fairly significantly. Trying to keep the lines level, but also trying to add new ones, almost adding more new without having something to connect to over here than you're doing anything else. And that's where some of these guidelines actually come in handy, because you can kind of reestablish your straightness based on those. But we came in perfectly parallel on that side, which is good. So we can go ahead and just kind of put this here, throw that down. That looks nice and level. Line it up straight and add our new row. Take and do that. Get that little tap and toenail. Then in. Try to get that straight. Out across. There we go. That looks nice. Okay, now let's work our way back across. Like so. nicely. And for anyone that may be curious, SOAD, or SOAD, was our call sign for me and my buddy Abe when we were with, I believe it was 5th Special Forces Group. We were attached to them as intelligence assets that didn't get used. Mostly because what are you going to do with a couple of Korean linguists in the middle of Iraq? Not much. So, needless to say, it was a blast. We had fun. Didn't really have much to do. Got to hang out with some cool guys. But System of a Down was one of our favorite bands at the time. Ironically, being fairly anti-war, it was a good choice in my opinion. But I changed our call sign to SOAD, and our platoon sergeant got very offended because we weren't allowed to have Hollywood call signs. So, naturally, I pulled out of my butt that it was System Operations at Diamondback, because we were at FOB Diamondback, which mollified him quite nicely. But that's where that comes from. Needless to say, that was about the most wasted year and a half of my life. Teach me to try to go to someplace cool like Alaska for a station. Should have just stayed in Korea. Things would have been a lot more fun then. Stayed there, brought the wife, brought the kids. But hindsight being 20/20 as it is, oh well. Not much to be done about it. Guess I get to say I'm a combat vet, even though I was a frickin' fobbit and never left the wire. So, I don't consider myself a combat vet, but okay, we're approaching the end of our flap here soon. Things are still going pretty straight compared to this guideline, which is what we want to see. And we're almost beyond the point where we have to tack on more. But not quite because of the angle that these are running at. So this line here will go to here. So I got to add all sorts of lines to this section here, which introduces plenty of opportunity for things to go sideways. Best way to prevent that is just take the time, do it slow, which I'm sure is not exactly the most entertaining for you guys, but it's what needs to be done. Make sure this is done right. Alright, so yeah, we're dang near perfectly 2 millimeters off that line. Nice and parallel. Which is what we want to see. And then we'll toenail the next one in. Just keep moving. Alright, coming along, getting close. When we get up to the maker's mark, things start getting a little interesting because we're going to have to maintain our lines, but go around and leave a void around the stamp. And that gets to be a little challenging. So we'll show you how to do that when we get there. Pretty much involves being even more patient than you're currently being, keeping things in line. Okay. Slowly work our way in. System of a Down comment has got me buffaloed, trying to think of who would have been there at that time frame, and also who actually might be watching my channel. Proving to be quite the brain teaser. So we'll keep going here. We're just going to kind of lightly tap that one. We don't want to go all the way deep because we're going to try to go around this now. So we're just basically making the marks here. Now we're going to make a mark over here. And toenail that puppy in like so. And then put another to finish out that line. Now we're going to go back over here. Continue. But since we don't want to get in close to that, we're going to kind of just toenail it in. That way it's not a full stamping. We're going to basically do like we did down here and branch. Go around and try to make sure we meet up back over here without looking stupid. Okay. Like so. Now, get that there. Like so. You can faintly see that we're following this line right here, which is what we're looking to do. Now, let's work on the other side. Go ahead and make our mark. And line it up. Give it a little bit of a tap. There we go. Toenail that one in. Okay. Like so. Okay. So we've got this line going. Now we got this line we need to slightly worry about. Okay. Like so. And we're going to line it up over there. Go around. Like so. And then like so. So we met up perfectly. This line goes up through here like so. Just gotta slowly work your way around. There we go. So now we've got basket weave done all the way through there. Put this. Where the heck did that come from? Okay. There we go. Can need that one next, we're also going to need this poor boy. I used him so much he's bent. Let's go ahead and we're gonna go around like so. We're gonna blend the edges of our basket weaving together. Like so. There we go. Now, got a nice little border around the maker stamp. We're going to save the border around here until later. So, next we're going to basket or border stamp. We're going to do serpentine border stamp. This is our next destination. I actually really like doing serpentine borders. They're just a lot of fun. So, we're going to start right up here at our point. I'm going to put this right on the edge. Nice impression there. We're going to start with our inner border, and we're going to work our way around, staying just on the inside edge, pressing that down. You're going to want to aim, if it's curved, you want to aim it so it's almost straight out from the curve. I'm going to kind of just make a good judgment, try to make it go straight away from the line. It's not always perfect, but a little bit of practice. It's actually really simple to do. One of the things you got to remember to do is get the point a good smack. You don't want to only seat the back of the serpentine. You want to get a nice good impression with the front. Otherwise, when you do the other side of the serpentine, it's gonna stretch it and make it less defined. So you want a good firm impression. And the tips will get closer or farther apart as you go around the curves, and that's actually part of the fun, in my opinion. Get them in there nice. And then when you go to the other side, that's when the magic starts happening. Now it doesn't look like much. But as soon as we start in on the other side, and what we're going to do is we're going to go up to about here, and then we're going to start over here, because we don't want any odd spacing to show up, you know, up in here where it's going to be the most visible. So we're going to want to bring this here. I'm just going to walk that through. So you want to line up the edge just flush with the edge of the stamp as you're doing this. Go. Okay, we'll actually bring them back to about there before we switch to the other side. Let's just keep walking this along. Oops. There's me not getting the tip in deep enough to make a good impression. So we'll bring this around like so. I think we will go ahead and leave that there, and then we'll come over to this side, and we want to line our stamp up with the very corner right here again. And this section up here becomes important here shortly. So let's work our way around. And it's going to look a little weird, kind of cattywampus to start. But what we'll do is we're going to run an edge beveler through here and tamp that all down and blend everything together. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring it in to finish out our first layer. All right, so we're going to want to bring this up to here. There we go. That worked out pretty nice. Now, to do the next row, what we're going to do is we're going to take, and we're going to start over here. And you're going to want to put the edges of the, you're going to want to line up the tip into the, between the other two tips. That's more what you're shooting for than anything, is making sure that that is lined up, going straight between them to make this lovely little zigzag. So, if we do that, and it also keeps things even if you've got it right in the middle. So sometimes they're going to be spread out, and this side, it's not always going to be edge to edge. There's a pretty good gap here because we had to move it over to get the tip in between, which is okay. That's not a problem. We want to make sure that we're going more for, oops, slipped right out of my fingers. Centering that, then being even on the sides. And we'll just work this along, making sure that we're centered and even. I like these smaller ones. They look really nice and tight in there, and it just looks fun. There we go. See? Nice and tight in this tight curve, and then it sweeps out a little more broadly on those. So there's a little bit of a mark where the one edge meets the other on the inside, and if you aim for that with the very tip of the point, it seems to work out pretty good for lining things up and keeping things even. Just keep working our way along. Keep making our serpentine. Occasionally you get a little off and you're not quite perfect on each side of the serpentine, but that's okay. The width varies so much depending on whether you're in a tight curve or a wide curve or straight, that and just adds a little bit more character to it. Kind of have a Bob Ross mentality when it comes to making sure everything's even. Well, if you make a mistake, it's okay. It still looks nice. Little bitty imperfections show that it's handmade rather than made by some machine. Just keep working our way along. So yes, when it comes to the stamping portion, happy little accidents, well, they're okay. Anytime happy accidents aren't really that good is when you're messing with the functionality of the item. If you're having a hard time lining this up, you can pre-bevel the edges, and it helps get the back of the serpentine stamp down into a little bit of a notch. Helps guide things a little better. When I first started out, that's how I did it. Because getting this to line up every time can be a bit of a chore. You don't want to go outside your border. There we go. When we get down to the bottom of the holster, I'm going to have to do a little bit of extra work right in that area just to make things line up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to about here, and then we'll start on the other side and bring it in, and we'll finish up on the very bottom. Well, there we go. Like so. And okay. Then we're going to come back up to here and start our way back over to here. And then we'll work our way through this area up here. So we're not done with that area yet. Okay, just keep lining things up, centering them. Like so. Okay, and then what I typically like to do is just leave these two here without a serpentine. Gives it kind of a fun little look. They're just so thin right in there. But yeah, I can give them, but I like leaving that just as it is for my own personal. So now we're going to line up right on the edge up here of the previous stamp on the outside. Give it a bit of a tap. Then we're going to go to the other side. And we're going to go and line it up just on the edge. And point it inward. And give that a tap. Now we're going to do this side. It slowly starts to look kind of like a zipper that's closing. Just back and forth, back and forth. Like so. And then one last one right here. And then I typically, when I've got this little section here, I like to take my swivel knife, kind of just give it a bit of a cut, and a cut, and a cut, and just a little bit of a decorative cut there. I personally just like the way that looks. Okay, put these back. Next, we're going to bevel all these edges down. So, I have just a textured bevel here. slowly walk it on the very edge of our bevel, or of our knife cut, I should say. That just kind of helps even out the marks between the serpentine borders. So we go ahead and just walk that along. Light little taps. You tilt it at a slight angle. It walks along pretty easily. Just going to use your pinky on the leather to hold it just off, so the tool is only making contact with the leather when you're tapping it. Otherwise it's just hovering right above the leather, letting it walk across without dragging. Okay, let's move this around a little bit. If you do it slowly and evenly, just tap, tap, tapping as you're going, it helps reduce the marks from the beveler standing out from each other. It makes more of a smooth bevel. So just slow taps all the way around as you walk your bevel down that seam. Just slowly walking. Tap, tap, tap. Doesn't have to be hard. Let the hammer or the maul do the work. Just basically letting it fall onto the beveler rather than hitting. Just keep walking it around. Okay, that should be all the inner edge. Now we're going to do the outer edge. Just going to walk it through, blending together the serpentines, bringing in those little bits of extra that were left out because there's some extra space in there. Kind of joining them together as one pattern rather than separate parts. Just brings them together, makes them look nice. If you make any boo-boos, well, it can help hide some of the little boo-boos without too much problem. working our way around. Okay, spin this around, and we'll finish. Just walk that through there. Okay. Almost getting a little dry because it's just surface wet, but it's just about right. Alright, there we go. All the way around. Looking good, looking good. And then I always like to finish it off by taking this. And just add a little bit of a cover border to our main basket weaving. Helps close out the unfinished edges of the basket weaving. Kind of pens it in and contains it rather than letting it look like it just frayed off. And stopped. We start there, as everything else starts right about there. Just going to work our way around, just off the edge of the cut. Kind of provides closure to the basket weave. Without being too obtrusive. I'm just going to walk this around. that's closing out nicely. Let's come back down to here. Almost finished. I think when I'm done with this stamping, we're going to call it a day as far as the stream goes. Go get some lunch, drink some more coffee, maybe do a couple little chores. We'll see how things go. But it's been nice having everybody who's popped in today. It's actually quite a few people have popped in today. I'm actually enjoying that. So thank you for watching, everyone. I'm going to call it quits for the stream as soon as I wrap this up. I'm honestly very hungry, so I think it's time for breakfast. Even though it's what, noon? Ooh, afternoon. All right. So we had a good stream, had a good amount of people join and watch. Got a good amount of work done, lots of stamping. We've got the base for our holster. It's going to fold up like this when we're done. But for now, we're going to let this dry. And then I will dye it black. We'll work on stamping this. This will take no time. And I'll stamp this one too later. But once we get all these pieces done, it'll be time to line it and start assembling. I may consider coming back and streaming again later. But thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. Give a like to the video. Leave comments. If you're feeling exceptionally generous, by all means, you can become a patron at my Patreon. Otherwise, have a good weekend, and we'll